Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. Somebody give me a 5 by 5 out there. Make sure that you can hear me okay. And I pray that you are all blessed and doing well wherever in the earth you may be. And we know that we are scattered all over the earth. Thank you, my brother. And there are our brethren are all over the earth. So we need to continue to pray one for another and be a people that are sober and vigilant in this hour. There are so many things that are happening right now in the earth that are changing everything that we knew, the status quo for Earth, and it's not just one nation or another. So wherever you might be, the status quo is probably changing where you are, and so we encourage you to join together with your brothers and sisters in Mashiach and unite in one accord, to be people united, because that is where your strength will be. Remember, one sets 1,000 to flight, but two sets 10,000 to flight. The force multiplier is in full effect. And so we encourage you all to unite with your brethren, to put aside the weights and sins and trespasses and disagreements that easily beset us, that we may run this race with patience. Amen and amen. And I'm grateful for everybody here with us on the chat, whether you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook or Rumble, either way. And we really strongly encourage everyone, even though you may watch on YouTube, make sure that you are subscribed to our Rumble channel as well, just in case, because again, we're going to be seeing some crazy things coming up here shortly. So we strongly encourage everyone to, have multiple points of communication. And this is one of the reasons why we have our own discussion board and place for gathering, because when others went down, we were able to still communicate. And that's important. You need to know that you're not alone. That sense is exactly what they want to use to take advantage of. And tonight, we're going to be covering quite a few stories. And for those of you that are maybe joining us for the first time, we have a website that we use for all of the stories that we put up. And Remnant Watch is a labor of love. You will not find any pop-ups and all of that stuff. We do not have a connection to Google. You're going to find out here very quickly why that's important. And so we just encourage you to bookmark this site. This is where we put the stories as we go. And so it kind of creates a long log, if you will, of everything that we've covered, and a bit of a witness to what we've seen as we march toward the coming of the King of Kings. And for those of you that are that have disconnected completely from the news, I don't blame you. A lot of people have that attitude, and that can be very detrimental, obviously, because you're not aware of certain things. But I completely understand, and you certainly don't want to be getting constant updates. And so what we like to say around here is that we like to be informed without being overwhelmed. And so this allows us to do that without letting these things accumulate on top of us. And again, we don't use monetization, which means we get put on the very bottom of the barrel, and we need you, our viewers, those of you who are members of Remnant House, those of you who are part of the Remnant worldwide, to share the links and encourage your brothers and sisters. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story is the UN Security Council has passed a resolution demanding the Gaza ceasefire. So those that have been praying for cooler heads to prevail, well, your prayers are being answered, at least to the extent that there's a worldwide effort to say we need to put an end to this. And again, we don't take sides in these things. We just are in the side of peace and shalom. Amen. UN Security Council passes a resolution demanding Gaza ceasefire as U.S. abstains. The U.S. abstained from the proposal, which also called for the immediate release of hostages and the expanse of aid into Gaza. So by abstaining, they didn't interfere with the measure, which is essentially the same as agreeing to it. The United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution that demands a ceasefire in Gaza and for the rest of Ramadan. The Muslim holy month began on the 10th of March and is set to finish on the 9th of April. Anybody else think that's interesting? Meaning the council is calling for a 2-week truce, though the proposal said the pause in fighting should lead to a permanent, sustainable ceasefire. And this is really good news because I do believe that as cooler heads prevail, they will be able to prosecute those who are actually guilty of crimes as opposed to just prosecuting an entire people group, which makes no sense. The U.S. abstained from the vote, with the 14 other council members, including Russia, China, and the U.K., voting in favor. And the big one there is the U.K. The resolution also demanded the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, not linked to a timeline, and the emphasis is on the urgent need to expand the flow of humanitarian assistance to the Gaza Strip. And I do believe that any interference with that is going to then be marked down as another crime, right? Because again, there are innocent people that are being affected. And so thank you, all of you who have prayed and interceded on behalf of this situation, to pray for peace. This is what we are. We are ambassadors of peace. We make peace where there is war. So that is what we do. And unfortunately, again, there are those that believe that war works. We're just not in that grouping. We don't buy into that thinking process. And of course, now you're seeing a big policy shift from the U.S. government. And definitely making their presence felt, if you will. And they're saying some things they didn't say before. So now, the Biden regime got into a public spat, according to Politico, and their headline is pretty gross, so I'm not going to show that. But the last time Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu got into a public spat as ugly as this one was 14 years ago. And so there's definitely massive pushback. And I do believe a lot of that had to do with the visit of Mr. Gantz. If you all remember, we reported on that. And so that is something that we're seeing more of, is intervention efforts to slow this whole thing down. Earlier this month, in his State of the Union speech, Biden said it was finally time to have a come to Jesus talk with Netanyahu. In recent days, he praised Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer for effectively advocating Netanyahu's ouster. So the U.S. is now basically lining up. And I think that a lot of what you're seeing is, again, this effort, this very interesting response to hold individuals responsible, which is having its effect. And I do believe that this is something that going forward makes a lot of sense. After all, if somebody is ordering certain things, well, they should be held accountable for that. And speaking of Israel, many of you have been paying attention. I've gotten this link several times in the last week as people are concerned about what they're seeing here. Despite what they may be lacking, a massive altar for the red heifer sacrifice has been constructed in Israel. And I will say this is the first time I've seen this particular apparatus wheeled out to the public. But what I can tell you is that since 2000, I've seen at least 10 different news pushes for this very same thing. So this is why it's one of those, you're wheeling this out again. And so, of course, there's a lot of energy that is now, sort of rising there. A red heifer sacrifice would need to happen on the Mount of Olives. So again, remember that this is where we had to blow the shofar in 2015. And again, many people are not realizing the spiritual warfare that is actually going on. And this is really a very difficult time for everyone. So just be aware that the battles are going to be increasing. And there's going to be a tremendous amount of spiritual warfare as a result of these types of things. And here we go. We are seeing a lot of back and forth that I believe is going to escalate. So this is something that we need to keep in mind. And Speaking of escalation, this I found was really interesting. It had to do with Israel as well. And this is a very big deal, especially with regard to security in Israel. And Anonymous, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that group, but they're that infamous hacking group, and they have hacked or claimed to infiltrate Israel's nuclear plant at Dimona. Dimona, of course, was the subject of conflict between the Kennedy regime and Israel at the time. A hacker group discloses 7 gigabytes of documents it claims to have stolen, though Israeli sources view this primarily as psychological warfare rather than an act of substantive harm. Anonymous, a decentralized international hacktivist group known for cyber attacks against governments, claims to have infiltrated computers controlling Israel's nuclear infrastructure in the southern town of Dimona and stealing documents purportedly as a gesture of solidarity with the Palestinian people amid the war in Gaza. So this is now taking a new front. And again, folks, we knew it was a multi-dimensional war, but here we go. And they said first steps in our operation was successful. First step. So they're indicating that they're going to be doing more infiltrations in Israel. As we promised before, this operation was high risk, but we are not as like the bloodthirsty Netanyahu and his terrorist army and da 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 da. Okay, so they're basically very anti-Israel, and they are going to make their presence known. And again, some of this is being stoked up. I do think that there is a bit of effort to um, create a atmosphere. We've been talking about the 10,000-foot view, and you see these narratives being played out with the intent of putting people in a state of fear. And this works for the controllers. This works for those who want to be in charge of people movement. And this is something that's not new. After all, remember, it was Balak who was trying to pay Balaam so that he could take control of the people of Yasharel. If you remember, curse them for me, he wanted. So this is a variation of that. And they've gone after the error of Balaam. And this is one of the things that you're seeing. So we don't even know how much of this story is true. This the entire story could be fabricated for all we know, right? But the point is that the public is being told that now their nuclear facilities are being infiltrated, which has got to be absolutely terrifying for those within radius of that place, because of course you know as well as I do that that could be extremely detrimental to people's health. So once again, we're watching the manipulation of the minds, because this is a battlefield of the mind, right? That's why we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. We don't want to give them space in our minds. We want to know what's going on without them controlling or manipulating us. Okay. This is what is great about the remnant. You're wise, you're bright lights in the firmament, you're beautiful, and you see these things coming a long way off. So some of you already knew these kinds of things were going to happen. This is just confirmation for you. Okay. And speaking of conflict, this is again something that we've been watching over the last year. So we're not surprised by these things. See, this is why you have to stay informed, because otherwise these things might catch you by surprise and you go, oh no. But it says China's on track to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2027. So they drop these headlines so that they can seed the narrative. Okay. This is part of the process. Top U.S. military commander in the Indo-Pacific has said that Beijing is maintaining its goal of being able to invade Taiwan by 2027. Testimony that came as China sent the second largest contingent of warplanes around the democratic island in a single day this year. Yeah, we've got a few more reports that are coming in as a result of this. And again, we knew these things were going to happen. The king warned us that there would be wars and what? Rumors of war. So what's the rumors, and how would they spread? Well, Prince of the Power of the Air is showing you how he spreads rumors, right? And so not that there isn't truth to it, because I do think there is. After all, Taiwan is now admitting that it's got troops on its border. Here, take a look at this article here. American troops are to be permanently stationed in Taiwan. So the world is on brink as Taiwan admits U.S. troops are now stationed on the Chinese border. Okay, so that's a bit provocative. Um, the U.S. likes to be right on the borders of. It's on Eastern Europe. It's here in the edge of China. Superpowers will maybe have a feeling about that, right? A huge move that will likely send tensions and with China soaring as its president Xi Jinping covets the island. Taiwan has officially confirmed the presence of U.S. troops stationed on its island in the Taiwan Strait permanently, a development that could further escalate mounting tensions with China. So here we go. We're now flat out saying we're putting permanent troops there, which essentially becomes a tripwire. If China were to attack and kill, for example, a platoon of Marines, right? Platoon of Army specialists or something. Well, now that becomes a provocation. That becomes a tripwire, which I believe is probably their intention. Hopefully, this will hold off attack. What you're hearing on the underground is that Taiwan is basically the Epstein Island of the Pacific, that there's a tremendous amount of um, criminal underground that is the real target of China. So this is kind of interesting to watch as it develops, because as you're hearing varying reports, you're going to get more information, I think, as this goes, about what was really hiding in Taiwan and why they wanted to create this sense of conflict between the two nations. And so, but it is definitely heating up. Taiwan detects 20 Chinese aircraft in high single day activity. Taiwan's defense ministry said late Thursday that 20 Chinese military aircraft have been detected since nightfall, a rise in activity following a large number of planes spotted earlier in the day. So they're definitely stoking up this conflict. So I wouldn't be surprised, neither should you be surprised, if this one pops off a lot sooner than 2027. They're telling us that 2027 date, but I don't know that that's. I think they know better than to wait that long, because every month they wait, China just simply increases its military power. China has stepped up military pressures on Taiwan since 2016 after President Tsai Ing-wen was elected, sending in warplanes and other military aircraft, while Chinese ships maintain a near constant presence around its waters. So again, this is not something that's going to go away anytime soon, and most likely is going to escalate, especially if other theaters of operation go hot. Okay, so this is why we have to kind of keep an eye on it, and not to be, again, underestimated. If you guys remember, we did a report a couple of weeks ago, I believe, that North Korea, or actually it was last week, that North Korea, they were warning about its chemical weapons capability, right? So that was in that was in the narrative. Oh no, North Korea is now playing around with chemical weapons and what have you. And again, it just never this little hermit kingdom doesn't like to be out of the news, man. Okay, now North Korea is testing a new hypersonic missile. Where did they get this hypersonic missile? Where'd they get that? Oh yeah, that's right. Putin and Kim got together and swapped some stuff. So there you go. North Korea tests its new hypersonic missile with one target in mind. One U.S. target in mind. The Pacific territory of Guam is home to U.S. military bases. And so you're seeing more reports now coming out that put military personnel at harm's way. And those of you that have friends in the military, I'm a veteran. Many of my viewers, many of you out there are veterans. Salute out to you. We need to keep our brothers in prayer, brothers and sisters in prayer, because it is going to get dicey here, I believe, very soon. So, once again, this is heating up. And speaking of heating up, there again, we've been watching this attempt to bring about massive conflagration, massive war. I believe to cover the financial things that are happening and the collapse of the financial system. I believe that's why they need conflict. They need the giant eraser. And war tends to be their giant eraser. And if you need any evidence of that, just look back over the last 150 years and just see how many conflicts have come about, and you'll know that this is their giant eraser. They use this quite often. And so this explains why we just saw this event in Moscow. The death toll now is at 133 in Moscow after a terror attack. That's a pretty significant terror attack. 11 suspects have been arrested. Now, ISIS has claimed responsibility for one of the most deadly terrorist attacks in Russia. So Fox News is biting on this ISIS claim, but Russia is not going for the head fake. Okay, just to let you know, you can watch this here on our. The link is available on Remnant Watch. But I don't think Russia's going for it. Russia's coming straight out and saying, nope, we believe it was the Ukraine, and it was not ISIS. So here, Vladimir vows revenge. Putin says Moscow's Carton Hurl gunman who killed 133 and tried to flee to Ukraine, despite ISIS claiming the terror attack. So they're not quite buying the ISIS did it program. They're sticking with it's Ukraine, and Russia is reeling after last night's horrific terrorist attack on a concert hall, the worst to hit the country in 20 years. Blood has been spilled. And so this is horrible. The footage is just horrible. Okay. And people perished in a horrible way out just to go to a concert. The Russian president addressed the nation and promised his people he would punish those responsible for the massacre. And of course, again, you're going to see a lot of spin, I believe, a lot of manipulation of this to point it in a certain direction. And I'm always very suspicious when when there's that kind of effort going on, because again, it would appear that there are those who are really bent on creating that conflict. And now this is creating a hyper tense situation in Eastern Europe. And so now we're seeing this story out of Poland. Poland to demand explanation from Moscow after missiles breach its airspace during a Ukraine attack. And so Russian missiles which targeted Ukraine's Lviv region, while Kiev suffers third pre-dawn attack in 4 days. So Putin is definitely unleashing on Ukraine. So if you thought he was going to run after some people in Syria or, or Pakistan or something, that head fake didn't work. That little juke that they tried to do, that didn't work. And he's got his eyes clearly on Ukraine. And I do believe that they are trying to wrap this conflict up. And now, again, with the increase in conflict with China, and everyone knows that China and Russia are united in the BRICS program and in other ways as well. They're neighbors and against the hegemony of the West. So this is not looking good in terms of going forward for conflict. And France, for whatever this is worth, never known to be a major power, but nevertheless, France is already preparing some 2,000 troops for Ukraine. Russia claims. The head of intelligence, Narshkin, says Macron's hiding number of French troops already killed in Ukraine, and they're looking to send more. France is preparing 2,000 troops to send to Ukraine, the head of Russian Foreign Intelligence Service said Wednesday. The contingent for sending to Ukraine is already being prepared. At the initial stage, it will amount to about 2,000 people. Now, this may not seem like a significant number, but it depends on their skill set. So if they're, trained in certain types of weaponry, that could be a game changer. That can definitely make a change in the battlefield for the Ukraine side, if you will. So Russia has every right to be concerned about specialists being brought in, those that maybe know how to operate more advanced equipment. that could make a significant difference. So we should expect to see more conflict as a result. And this next story, well, this lets us know that this is also being seeded into the narrative. So whenever you see things again, because I know you guys are sharp, so I'm just going to let you know about it. You can filter it how you need to, but you're picking up that they say these things, and then later on they get to use them, right? Because, well, we told you about that. Oh, we told you that Russia plans on attacking the SpaceX satellites, and attempt is gonna knock out military satellites. We told you that was going to happen. Didn't we tell you about that? Oh yeah, no, it was the Russians. Okay, Russia has accused the United States of using commercial satellite operators for its intelligence efforts and is threatening to take military action in response. The news comes days after Reuters released a report earlier this month detailing a classified contract that SpaceX signed with the U.S. intelligence agency to launch hundreds of spy satellites. And we are aware of Washington's efforts to attract the private sector to serve its military space ambitions, Foreign Ministry spokesman Maria Zakharova told reporters, as quoted by Reuters. And so these systems became a legitimate target for retaliatory measures, including military ones. Why is that important? Well, because I believe there's a lot more infrastructure that is now going through these satellites, this SpaceX system, and so this could detrimentally affect communication not just over Eastern Europe but all over the world. So once again, you're getting the sort of the hints, the seeding that, hey, communication could go down. Hey, communication go down. Whoa, communication might go down. What do you think is likely to happen, folks? Okay, they're likely to pull that off, and right on cue, not to be outdone. Just and the hits just keep on rolling. Officials warn of widespread cell disruption ahead of the solar eclipse. So, in case you didn't catch that other narrative seeding, here's some other narrative seeding. Okay, officials are warning people that April's solar eclipse could cause widespread disruption to cell phones. Oh no! Hopefully, their previous run with the solar flare only affected AT&T. So maybe this time they'll be more thorough in the way in which they interrupt. Millions of tourists are expected to flock to certain states along the solar eclipse path. A really dumb idea, by the way, which is happening on April 8th. NASA has revealed that the solar eclipse will cross North America, passing over Mexico, the United States, and Canada. Depending on the weather, the first location that will be experience totality is Mexico's Pacific coast, which will happen around 11:07 a.m. And so, Saints, let me just tell you right now that there's way, way, way too much attention being paid to an eclipse. Now, we've seen eclipses. I'm 60 years old. How many of these have we seen? All over the world. And we've never seen this kind of hype and preparation being made, and narrative seeding. Never seen it before. So this is really unprecedented and something for us to take note of, because after all, you are responsible for the security of your families, and we need to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We need to see trouble far off. Okay, so this is why we need to keep our eyes open as to what they're planning and what things are coming our way. And the U.S. is warning of cyber attacks as well against water systems. So the same narrative seeding crosses over, because, again, this could be very dangerous, right? So cyber attacks against water systems throughout the nation. So that's a major concern because, well, let's face it, water affects everything. Okay. And so, sorry about that. And by the way, those of you that are paying attention to the Trump case, he is definitely crossing some lines, if you know what I mean. So pay attention to some of the verbiage that he says, because you might be shocked at some of his comparisons and things. I'm not going to make a big deal of that, but I got to tell you, I'm shaking my head some of these things that I'm seeing. But getting back to this particular string of news stories regarding the eclipse, here the FAA is warning of an air travel disruption. So now, You're talking about disruptions of phones, which we already saw that it was when we saw the disruption of Facebook and Meta, and how much effect that had on everybody. So how do you pull off a digital economy on such fragile infrastructure? This whole thing works against them. So very interesting. But the FAA is warning of air travel disruption in the path of April 8th's eclipse. And the unique total solar eclipse will bring a path of totality across 13. So think original colonies, 13 U.S. states, when the moon totally blocks the sun, leaving the sun's uttermost layer, the corona, visible to the naked eye. So a lot of people are going to be wanting to see that. And so they're concerned about what's going to happen during that time period. But I got to tell you, Saints, there's, again, way too much hype. I mean, when have you seen this? Again, it's just some of my older viewers and those of you that are my generation. When have we seen the National Guard deployed? We couldn't get the National Guard on the southern border, but we got the National Guard being deployed for a solar eclipse. Anybody else find that just a slight bit odd? Okay, just a little bit. Oklahoma's National Guard is set to be deployed for the upcoming total solar eclipse when as many as 100,000 people are expected to visit one county. Okay. Well, that happens when they have a fair. That happens every time they have the state fair. Okay. In Minnesota, we got the great Minnesota get together, and they got millions of people coming into one county. So this just doesn't pass the smell test. The Guard will provide first responders as well as units with hazmat response capabilities. Why? Why do you need hazmat? Anybody else find that a little odd? I do. Okay, but it's in the narrative. Hazmat response capabilities in case of an incident like an industrial fire, just in case. Okay. Why not? I can think of 1,000 other just in cases you could have, right? Why this one? Well, there's some definite scuttlebutt out there that there is some potential for um, warfare. And remember what the North Koreans were accused of: chemical warfare, right? So does that now make a little more sense when you see this? Oh, it's the North Koreans. Should something happen, right? I mean, there are just so many cross lines for narrative spinning that I keep seeing. Lieutenant Colonel Jaban Flory, commander of the 63rd Civil Support Team, said, "This influx of visitors has the potential to overtax local resources, and thanks to the training and experience our guardsmen have working alongside local agencies all across Oklahoma, the CST is uniquely qualified to support our fellow Oklahomans." Man, that sounded good, didn't it? Didn't that sound great? Man, you guys got me saluting. It sounds so great. I got news for you, folks. There's something very fishy going on here. Okay, very fishy. And so if you guys have your senses are tingling, you're starting to go, this is very suspicious. Okay, if you're feeling that way, you're not alone. All right, you're not alone. Just be aware. This is why it's important for us to be where he's called us to be. Many people are going to find themselves, I think, in harm's way. And here's another story: the solar eclipse on April 8th, some U.S. schools will be closed for the day. Why? Again, have you ever seen that before, right? Experts share safety protocols to protect people's vision. Now that I've seen, where they talk about, your eyes and make sure you don't look directly and all of that. But why close the schools? Like that, doesn't that add to the number of people that are roaming around? Doesn't that add a problem? I would think so. Many schools across the U.S. are rethinking their class schedules for April 8th, 2024, the day a solar eclipse will hit North America. The eclipse's line of totality, the areas where the sun will experience total coverage, will span now, I guess it's 15 states, not 13 states. You can't get that straight. The eclipse route will travel from Mexico, arching northeast toward Texas, from Texas to Ohio before reaching Canada and going back into Maine. And so very interesting and highly suspicious, if you're asking this guy. Okay. I am like, wow. There's a lot of signs in the heavens stuff that they're trying to explain in advance, right? So we know that according to the scripture, that this is one of the signs of the coming of the king, the signs in the heavens, which many of you may remember the blood moons that happened in 2015. And those were so impactful that there ended up being a massive spiritual warfare moment in September of 2015, which I believe is the reason why they're not getting away with a lot of what they had planned. Because, as one brother said it, they lost their air force, they lost their air cover during that conflict. And this is one of the things about spiritual warfare we all need to learn. This is why your prayers are so important. And now look at this. So there again, more seeding of this narrative, guys. It's just too much of this. Okay. Massive geomagnetic storm creates northern lights displayed throughout the US. And now they're letting you know that there's massive geomagnetic storms underway in the US caused by strong eruptions from the sun capable of disrupting America's electrical grid. So now the electrical grid may also be, so we got phones, we've got water, and we got electrical grid, and producing northern lights as far as Alabama and northern California on Sunday night. NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center issued an alert for the electromagnetic storm after satellites picked up a solar flare earlier on Sunday. So again, not saying that these aren't real. I'm just saying that coincidentally, they're all happening around the same time. Well, this makes it very suspicious. So we need to be aware of what is happening right now. Now, I think that a lot of this is drawing attention away from things that are very much on the ground and do, in fact, very much affect day to day life, especially for those who live in Texas and on the southern border. And take a look at this story because, again, folks, if you thought all those conflicts were going to be overseas somewhere, I think they're letting you know they're going to be coming home to roost. Over 100 migrants break through razor wire, knocking down guards as they illegally cross El Paso's border in a wild scene. And again, you can watch this. The link is on Remnant Watch. Amazing. A group of over 100 migrants attempted to enter the U.S. illegally by rushing a border wall Thursday, breaking through razor wire and knocking over guards in the process. Can you imagine that level of entitlement? Okay, entitlement. It's like, no, we're just gonna come in anyway. We're gonna bust through your fence. We're just coming because we need to get that debit card. The Biden debit card. We need to get one of those. And you're not stopping us just because you're law enforcement. Um, I can't even understand how the logic of this is working, but nevertheless, I think that the effect of mind control, the effects of these things that we've been warning about for a long, long time, well, they're manifesting. And right on time, guys may have known this. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the Supreme Court greenlit the Texas law allowing the state police to arrest migrants. So this is going to get a lot more heated. And, yeah, I think they're armed in answer to your question, Brother Allen, but I don't think they have the what it's going to take to, if you tried to do that in Israel, by the way, you would be shot. Okay. Plain and simple. If you grabbed a bunch of your friends and thought you could bust through an Israeli offense, you would be shot. That's what made the October 7th thing so odd. The Supreme Court on Tuesday allowed a Texas law to take effect that enables state law enforcement to arrest people they suspect are illegally entering the United States from Mexico. The three liberal judges publicly dissented from the court's order that clears the way for the controversial statute. The order is not a final decision, and the case could return to the high court. So we don't expect this to be over just yet, but it is an interesting back and forth. Because the federal government is not protecting the state has decided on its own that it's going to protect its own territorial integrity, which makes a lot of sense. And now there's that conflict. So they're going to be fighting about this. I think we're going to hear more about that in the coming days. There's going to be more, lawfare, because there are those that are just absolutely adamantly believe that they have every right to cross whatever boundaries, and they don't care that you have a fence or a wall or whatever. And this entitlement is beyond destructive. And so, this is why it is really wise for people to be together, united. And this is where those that are scattered and um, doing their own thing may be in greater risk. So this is a dangerous time. And that's not just happening physically, it's also happening digitally. And so, this is part of what we're also seeing. Many of you have seen lately that I posted several memes, and if you follow us on social media, you know that we've been hot on the trail of all those fake ministers, I call them sinisters, who are in bed with Google, who took YouTube mammon, right? So they took the 30 pieces of silver to sell you all out, and they gather you together in controversies. They love creating. If you pay people to have fights, they're going to create fights. If you pay people to create controversy, well, guess what they're going to go do? They're going to create controversy because it draws traffic, and that traffic is what they want to sell. So they need controversial things. They need fights. They need arguments, debates, all fruit of the reprobate mind. They'll always have an advantage over us because, we're not dogs. We don't have litters. We have children one at a time. So, this is what you're seeing out there. And authorities, look at this story. This is going right in line with that. And this is a little spooky. Okay, so again, this isn't just YouTube or Google sites, but any sites that are using Google for advertising, because that's also tracking. Okay, so there's another thing. But look at this. Authorities reportedly ordered Google to reveal the identity of some of its YouTube video viewers. So once again, they're collecting this data with an intention. You apparently don't have to do anything illegal for law enforcement to ask for your Google data. Dun, 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 right? Isn't that interesting? Federal authorities in the US asked Google for the names, addresses, and telephone numbers and user activity of the accounts that watch certain YouTube videos between January 1st and 8th, 2023, according to an unsealed court document viewed by Forbes. People who watched those videos while they weren't logged into an account weren't safe either, because the government also asked for their IP addresses. The investigators reportedly ordered Google to hand over the information as part of an investigation into someone who used the name Elon Musk, whatever, online. Authorities suspect that they're selling Bitcoin for cash, is thus breaking money laundering laws or something. So it doesn't matter what the reason is, right? So they always have a legitimate sounding reason for everything they do. Always sounds super legit. Like, oh, well, all we're doing is this. Well, we're after this bad guy. Never look at their intentions. Always look at capabilities. Intentions can change, right? But capability is capability. The fact that they could do that, the fact that they could even ask for it and get it, should alarm all of you. And this is one of the things that we've been trying to warn you about, that many of those you think are safe are worse than malware, worse than hackers. They are actually in bed, financially and otherwise, with those who are, well, let's just put it this way, they're not exactly looking out for your best interests. And all they have to do is keep declaring things to be, sort of under the umbrella of this word here that I'm about to put on the screen. France is raising this alert warning. See that word between raises and alert? Okay. All they got to do is use that word, and that justifies everything. You see that? So this is a dangerous shift in the world and the way in which things are being managed. And so their alert level is the highest level ever. They've never had this alert level, so they saved it just for now. Again, unprecedented times. The French government is raising its alert warning to its highest level following the shootings in Moscow. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal said on Sunday after a meeting with its senior security and defense officials with President Emmanuel Macron. Attal said in a post on X that the decision, which comes months before Paris hosts the Olympic Games, was taken in light of, look at this. So now they're, oh my. Okay, claiming responsibility for the Moscow attacks and the threats weighing on our country. Oh my goodness. It's getting crazy how they're crisscrossing narratives to justify some of their military actions, policing actions, oversight, investigative actions. All these things are now going to be justified because of this atmospheric change. So again, that's why I encourage you all to, where you can, disconnect. And if you find yourself, having withdrawals because your devices don't work, well, take that as a warning. You need deliverance from the devices. We should be able to walk away. We should be able to have peaceful, quiet habitation without needing all these other things. I understand you like to stay connected, but be careful with any addictions to these things, folks. And what I think they're really covering up, and what I think a lot of this is meant to sort of obfuscate, is what is happening right in front of your faces. And this is where the rubber meets the road. You can look at all kinds of other data. You can look at all kinds of reports, but this one right here, this is telling you what's happening on the street. Pawn shop inventories are exploding. What does that tell you? The guy on the street, regular Joe, is finding himself having to go down to a pawn shop, taking things he overpriced merchandise, and try to get some cash for it so he can buy groceries, because it's getting bad, just as the book of Revelation said. How much longer will the Biden administration and the mainstream media continue to deny that we're in the midst of a very painful economic downturn? Debt levels have never been higher. Delinquency rates are spiking. The commercial real estate market is absolutely crashing, and the banking industry is mired in turmoil, and large companies are conducting mass layoffs all over the nation. So, absolutely, they are covering that piece of information. That's where the rubber meets the road, guys. When people have to go to a pawn shop just so they can make it, and you know that they don't like parting with their stuff. Most people are hoarders and hoard their stuff, so that they're going down to a pawn shop to dump off things is not a good sign. And I'll tell you another not really good sign. This is something we talked about last week. As police departments are starting to redo how they do policing, and we saw Pittsburgh suspend a whole shift, so they don't even answer the phone from 3 to 7 a.m. But look at this: a Maryland town suspends its entire police force, leaving residents to wonder why. A small town of Ridgely, located in Maryland's eastern shore, announced it was suspending officers of the Ridgely Police Department. Okay. And a large unexplained decision by a Maryland town to suspend its entire police force. Did you know that that could even happen? Did you even know that your police force could just suddenly say, we quit, or we got suspended, or underfunded, or whatever? The small town of Ridgely, located in Maryland's eastern shore, announced it was suspending officers of the Ridgely Police Department, leaving other public safety agencies to fill the void, which the police couldn't even fill the void. So, how is, like the fire department or some other departments going to fill that void? Folks, the frog is in the pan and the water's getting hotter. Are you going to jump out of the pan, or are you going to just sit there to see what happens? There's way too many people that are just going to go out to look at an eclipse, and their whole world is being eclipsed. Okay, so there's a lot of wild stuff that is now manifesting. Take a look at this. I've been warning you guys about this AI thing, right? And these robots. Well, I had a vision of what looked like humans picking up bodies, only I realized as I watched this that there was no way they could lift bodies the way they were unless they were superhuman or just human looking. And so when I see these types of stories, it reminds me of that vision, and it's coming to pass. And I think there's a reason why they need this, because I believe that humans are going to there's going to be an issue here. Okay. And iRobot, chilling rise of Chinese humanoid robots with calls for one in every home. Is that not literally the plot of iRobot? I mean, literally, not even sort of. Okay. And workforce to replace with a droid army. Okay. And of course, they put a pretty face on them. Oh, they're very nice. Humanoid robots might soon be brought to the homes of everyday people, according to a new robotics center in Beijing. The robots, which use AI and resemble human bodies in shape, are expected to propel China forward in its tech war with the US. Dong, dong, dong. Dongo Dongo Dong, months old robot center, Beijing Humanoid Robot Innovative Center, has so far provided minimal details about its latest project to release a general purpose humanoid robot prototype. Of course, it's just general purpose. After all, remember what I'm telling you, folks. Never look at intentions, always look at capability. Capability tells you everything. Somebody says, like, they look like Rosie from the Jetsons. That just dated you. But listen, this is real. Okay, this is really happening, and this is part of a plan. And I do believe that the migrant issue is somehow connected. So there are those that really don't believe in national sovereignty and what have you. So they're trying to do all kinds of things to shake you left and shake you right. Take a look at this story, guys. This is part of why I think there's going to be a lot of pushback against closing the border. Take a look at this. Thousands of boycotting Tyson Foods, which, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't deserve a nickel of your money, not for this reason, but for others. But I digress. Thousands boycott Tyson Foods amidst plan to hire 42,000 asylum seekers in New York, right? So they wrangled in Tyson Foods and said, "Hey, can you come and be part of the plan?" Take a look at this. Angry campaigners are urging shoppers to boycott Tyson Foods and its products amid its new move to hire thousands of asylum seekers. The food company has shut down more of its poultry and meat plants across the U.S., including facilities in Iowa, Virginia, and Arkansas, which employed over 2,000 people. Tyson Foods has recently hired dozens of immigrants, with the offer including immigration lawyers. So you see what's happening is these companies, these large corporations are being co-opted with this effort. So again, not to be against the foreigner, because we're not supposed to do that, but it does tell you that there's some things happening in our world. In fact, one of the things that we're seeing, of course, is geological effects, and these are things outside of man's control. So, for example, this heat wave that's happening in Brazil. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but this is sweltering. Okay, you're talking like 125, something like that degrees, soaring humidity on top of it. So we get dry heat in Arizona, but they're talking humid heat. In Brazil has sent the heat index to a scorching 62.3 centigrade in the capital Rio de Janeiro. The suffocating temperatures have been called the highest mark since Alert Rio, and the Rio Alert System began keeping records in 2014. Okay, and so yeah, look at Brazil. I mean, Brazil is being baked, baked. Okay, and we're seeing the stars falling from the heavens too, guys. So it depends on how you look at that. But I believe these celebrities that are suddenly getting out of here is because their stars are falling from the heavens. Here's another story that has, humans don't have any control over this. This is being done, I believe, by the earth itself. I mean, the earth is going to vomit out its inhabitants. So this is really concerning. 2,000 earthquakes in one day, which, remember, he said there will be earthquakes in diverse places. 2,000 earthquakes in one day off Canada's coast, suggesting the ocean floor is ripping apart, scientists say. Record earthquake activity off the coast of Vancouver Island. So this is the west coast of the U.S. at the birth of the new oceanic crust. Uh-oh, are we in a moment of cataclysm where the Earth does like a rotation of some sort? Right, almost 2,000 earthquakes rocked a spot off the coast of Canada in a single day earlier this month, which could be a sign of the new oceanic crust is about to be birthed via deep sea magmatic rupture rather. The quakes aren't any threat to people. They're relatively small. That's not the quake itself we need to be concerned about. It's the geo changes that are happening to the earth itself. This does not bode well. So there are many, many prophetic words about California, about the West Coast. Are we about to see a massive catastrophic event there? I don't know, but it looks like there's major changes happening. all around us. And this is, again, why it's important for us to be sober and vigilant. Here's another thing that is happening that is beyond man's control, if you will. You can question as to why this is happening, but nevertheless, you've got something of a biblical plague. Look at this, guys. Leprosy is making a comeback in Florida. Okay, leprosy of all things. Leprosy is on the rise again in the United States, particularly in Florida, concerning disease specialists. According to the World Health Organization, which we can totally trust, about 200,000 cases of the disease occur every year in 120 countries worldwide and are often associated with contact with armadillos. Well, the U.S. is experiencing cases creep upwards, with the number of infections across the country more than doubling over the past decade, both in people exposed to armadillos and those who aren't. So much for that connection. And according to reports from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention last year, there were 159 new cases of leprosy in the U.S. in 2020, around a fifth of which were in Florida. This is a highly contagious disease, by the way, folks. And if they found a way to aerosolize or weaponize this, woo, Florida, you's in trouble. Okay. But I'll tell you what's worse is Florida is losing their mind. All right. Look at this story. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Look at this. Florida teacher arrests for allegedly classroom sex with student, making him jealous by saying she had sex with other students. They arrested this lady. And this just goes to show you that all pedophiles aren't men. A lot of times they're women too. A teacher in Florida has been arrested after being accused of having sex with a student in a classroom and in her car in the parking lot of his grandmother's apartment. And this was a 12-year-old, folks. Okay? 12-year-old student. So this is how sick this dementia is hitting. And again, we point these things out not to pick on any particular people, but just to make sure that you're aware that putting your children into these environments isn't safe. And we just continue to see, yeah, they spelled rape wrong. We continue to see more and more evidence of that. And so we're seeing even in those that would otherwise be trusted. And again, the circuses are being exposed for just what they are, just a circus. And when you compromise one area, well, that tends to leak into other areas. So take a look at this. A pastor is being accused of having sex with a teenager more than 100 times while he was her legal guardian. This just came out. And an Indiana woman who says that she lost her faith in humanity after she was allegedly forced to have sex more than 100 times as a teenager with her pastor as he served as her legal guardian. So again, we're watching the mental degradation. And this, is just like shooting stories. They have a tendency to replicate, especially if people start thinking this is normal or acceptable. And we have to be very clear that this is unacceptable behavior. We've got to be people that protect our families. Now, that doesn't mean that we do this. So this was a little crazy, and we're going to finish our report tonight with this story. Pastor pays a hitman $40,000 to shoot his daughter's boyfriend. Okay, don't anybody do that. Hey, some of you might not like your children's friends, but that's not okay. Okay, California police say they've arrested a pastor on suspicion of attempted murder, charging that he paid nearly $40,000 to have his daughter's boyfriend shot in a murder for hire plot last year. Police in Riverside, California arrested Samuel Pasillas, 47, whom they identified as a pastor of a Spanish-speaking church congregation in Victorville, about 40 miles north of San Bernardino. And this is sad to me because, again, this is the reaction of those that are desperately trying to figure out how to put the genie back in the bottle, if you know what I mean. It's too late. We have allowed too many compromises. We look the other way for too long. Many of you are finding out just what Messiah meant when he said, cast not your pearls before swine. You're finding out that you will be attacked. Some of you are finding out just how hard it is to hold the line out there. I've been watching people on social media who just lit up recently, maybe in the last 6 months, and Elohim is using them to minister to people. But they're finding out that the pushback is real and significant. And so why? Because the mental collapse is real. And this is what happens as the days approach. And so just understand that this also is confirming his word. Men are losing their minds. Um, they are falling further and further into that abyss thinking, and that reduces people to literally flesh, and that is a dangerous thing, as you all well know. And so continue to pray for your families as Elohim moves you, get out of harm's way. Many of you are being discomfited and you're not picking it up. Elohim is telling you it's time to go. And if you try to keep digging in and doubling down, you'll only continue to struggle as more things around you indicate that you have overstayed your welcome, if you know what I mean. There are cataclysmic events, I believe, that will manifest here in the earth. And there are places that he has set apart that are safe, and other parts of the world that will not be. And so, this is why it's important for you to be a prayerful people, to be sensitive to what the Ruach is saying to the ecclesia. He's not talking to the stragglers. He's not talking to the people that just want to pop in. He's talking to his ecclesia, his assembly. He's going to move you to assemble in a place of safety, a place where you will not be attacked or you will not be destroyed, because he promises to preserve you. Well, that's tonight's report. I pray it's been a blessing to you. I'm sorry for some of the harsh stories. Some of these are hard to deal with, but it is better to be informed so that you're not overwhelmed. Thank you again for joining us. May Elohim bless each and every one of you. Good night.